Here you go, Ronnie. To get us started, somebody want to read the first paragraph from Leviticus Rabbah?
The ancient rabbis tell a story of a rabbi who sent his servant to the marketplace to buy some food, good food.
Good.
That's important. The servant went out and brought back a tongue. Next, the rabbi gave that same servant a somewhat strange request to bring him back some bad food from the market. The servant went out and brought back a tongue, which prompted the rabbi to ask his servant, "Why is it that when I asked for good food, you brought me a tongue? And when I asked for bad food, you also brought me a tongue?" The servant replied, "Because the tongue is the source of good and evil. When it is good, it cannot be
Surpassed.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
True.
When it is good, it cannot be surpassed. And when it is evil, there is nothing worse.
This is a very smart servant. He's been listening to the rabbi's words.
There you go, right? Thank you for listening.
Yes.
Right, so we often look at other things that have the potential of good and bad. Fire,
Right.
Fire has great potential in a positive way,
Yeah.
but also can be very destructive. Water,
Right.
right? Rain, floods, right? We need the water for things to grow, but yet it can also have very disturbing effects. And here we see the tongue being that way as well, right? That we can do such great stuff with our mouths, but we also have the ability to do bad. I don't bring it in here, but one of the first prayer really of Sukkot Zimra, of one of the sections of our morning prayer services, is Baruch She'amar V'Haya Ha'olam. Blessed is God, blessed is the one who spoke and the world was. Right? That speech is such an important thing, but speech can also be destructive. That we have the ability to build worlds with our speech, to enhance people, to build them up, to support them, and we have the ability to destroy somebody's world through our speech. So it's
Modern technology has brought so much to the world and gone into places, and yet the same technology has been used to destroy a lot of things.
Right, and we can look at a lot of different things around that of inventions and all that have been made, and sometimes they were made to do good things and bad things happen, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes they were made to do bad things and then it got turned around and they actually are used for good, right? So there's a little bit of both of
My
those.
grandmother had a saying, and I'm not sure I know how to pronounce it. It was in Yiddish.
Uh-huh.
She used to say, "Offen lung is offen tongue," and I have no idea. All we interpret is whatever comes out of your mouth is what you really want to say. And it's true. You could be good and you could be evil.
Yeah.
It sounded better in Yiddish than it sounded.
It always does. It always does.
Offen lung is
Offen lung is offen tongue. I don't. Yeah,
Is
not,
done.
Whatever
Tongue
you
is
say,
done.
you've done said it already, and
Yeah.
you can't take it back.
That's
sort of
right.
thing.
Okay, well, we'll see some of that as well in a little bit. Okay, so let's look at some of the texts from the Bible first, and most of these coming from the book of Proverbs, which is really in the writings, right? You have the Torah, the Nevi'im, the prophets, and then the writings. And Proverbs is one of the first books there. And so Jeff, you want to read?
Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Those who love it will eat its fruit.
Okay, there you go. So here you have that idea of the power that we have. I like how it connects it to those who love it will eat its fruit, right? That idea that the tongue works in a couple different realms, and sort of metaphorically, right? That you have that power with the tongue, right, to create life and death, but you also eat with it, right? You do these two different things, but there's a sweetness, right, to when you
It will also
when you
nourish
bring.
you. If you're eating its fruit, it's nourishing.
You mean
If
you mean if you ate tongue itself?
Well, I don't mean it that way,
Right.
but I mean the sweetness of words can
Uh-huh.
nourish you.
Right.
You're
Right.
assuming the it is the tongue. Maybe the it is the life,
Nice. Okay. Yep.
and
Right.
Hi.
Hello. Hello.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Traffic,
Yes.
and
Sorry.
Andrea, did you get the message?
I got Andrea's. Yeah, Andrea's on her way too, right?
Andrea's on her way.
Yeah.
It goes forever too.
I hear very bad traffic today.
I'll tell you why. I-75 is down to
Why?
5 miles an hour.
It's ridiculous.
They've got 2 lanes crossed, 2 lanes closed.
Because of construction or an
I don't know
accident?
why,
Uh-huh.
but I had to avoid I-75, so I had to come
They were
Okay.
this way,
They
to
did
go this
something.
way, this way.
Well, we're glad you're here.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Did you get the message?
I got the message. Thank you very much.
He's
And Andrea
Stuck in
too.
the traffic.
Yep.
Not-
Understood.
We all
Different
were.
Right. Okay. Jeff, go ahead with the next one.
Oh, sorry.
Right here.
There is blunt talk like sword thrusts, but the speech of the wise is healing.
Very similar ideas, right? Can be sharp like a knife or healing.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, one more.
An evildoer listens to mischievous talk. A liar gives an ear to malicious words.
Okay. Yeah, but wait a second. We've flipped it. Now we're not talking about the tongue anymore.
Right.
Right?
Talking
Now
about the ear.
we're talking about the
Receiving.
the receiver, right? Which is a little bit different. Okay. Right. Usually we think about right about evil speech, right? And that doing there. Now here's the person who's listening. That an evildoer listens to mischievous talk. A liar, right? One who speaks falsehoods gives ear to malicious words, right? That they're connected, right? In some ways, if you do one, you'll be more likely to do the other as well. Right? Go on to the next page.
The words of a querulous man are bruising. They penetrate one's inmost parts.
I never heard that word.
What, querulous? or
Yeah, what does that
quarrelous?
mean? Yeah, I never.
Quarrelsome.
Well, yeah,
Argumentative.
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
So true.
Why did they just say?
They wanted to confuse you.
They wanted to increase my book.
Go again, Hannah.
A gentle response allays wrath. A harsh word provokes anger. You can't, when someone's saying things like that, you can't come back because it's only gonna escalate. You have to step back and just,
Right.
You know.
If somebody's in a heightened state, right, anxious and harsh, right, then just hold back, right, right, be calm with them, right, and can set aside their wrath a bit.
you can't say, don't, but you can't get into the argument.
Right. Not easy. Certainly not easy,
No.
right?
No.
Right? We're drawn in very, very
Bite your
quickly.
tongue is what it is.
Yeah, we're drawn in very quickly, I think, to that.
You know, and
Oh, well.
anybody who's ever taught, Ronnie, you certainly know that, Kate, am I right?
About what?
As a
I am still.
anybody who's ever taught
Mm-hmm.
knows you don't raise your voice, you go quiet.
Yeah.
No, that's not true.
I know that.
I yell plenty.
No, but
When I had.
I'm very loud and animated.
Right.
I was
You're
in my
not
classroom.
loud.
I was in my classroom, but I always told my kids, be careful. When I'm quiet, you're in
Yeah,
trouble.
that's
Mhm.
even more.
My son did
There are
that.
ways, there are ways of getting across
Right.
without having to,
Exactly.
I mean,
Right.
I love you, well, I love all of you, I worked for a synagogue, had 1,400 people, I was their bookkeeper. I learned how to keep my mouth shut.
Right.
That's true, I mean,
Yeah.
really, I had 1,400 bosses.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you just, I worked there 21 years, so I must have been doing something
Must
right.
have done
Yeah.
okay.
My son knew that when I
It's the
talked
same.
quietly,
Yeah, that's
I
right.
was more upset than if I
That's
just
right.
got
Right,
angry with him or
right,
something.
right.
That's
And
right.
my sister, may she rest in peace, was always yelling and always
Yeah.
saying things like, I'm gonna kill
Yeah.
you. Well, the
Oh,
kids
I never
ignored it
said
because
that.
it had no meaning, you know?
You
it
get
just-
more with honey than you get with
Yeah,
something else. But,
Nice.
but oh boy, it feels so good when you can really yell.
Ron, in the middle of the page. Page
He who
2.
guards his tongue preserves his life. He who opens wide his lips, is ruin.
Right.
Yeah,
Right,
but
just
can
think-
I stop
yeah,
right
go ahead.
there, Rabbi,
Yep.
and say, sometimes you have to say something.
Right. Right.
So how is that different from, if you have a big mouth, that's your demise, but, you know, like I was watching Morning Joe this morning,
Mm-hmm.
and
Enough said.
he was, I
I
don't know what that means, but no,
You
what
can
does
just
that mean?
imagine.
Well, they certainly
What is
they
it?
certainly speak.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
first of all, that's his job,
Right,
he's a
right, right,
commentator,
right.
but he was upset about, Gail King being, threatened by this Snoop Doggy dog, whatever, Snoop Dogg,
Right.
that he threatened her life, he called her horrible names, you black bee, you black dog, and he said that nobody got so angry that not one of the media print media did not even carry the
Mhm.
story.
Mhm.
So how is that his ruin? He's just speaking something that is so offensive to her, you know, I mean, they threaten her life, they threaten her children's life. How is that not important that he speak up about something that
Well,
everybody else is pushing?
I don't think this is saying not
It's
to
not
speak,
the
not
same?
just. I don't think it's saying not to speak up at all, right?
Okay.
I think he who opens wide his lips, right? Sort of like I get the idea of sort of uncontrolled, right? When you just let it loose, right? Without having, I would say probably goals behind it, right? Values
Right.
behind it. Things like that. It's
Step
just
back and think.
just letting loose, right? Then that could be your downside. And I do think that you find that there have been plenty of some of these online personalities, right? Radio people and TV who they've said stuff, right? There's actually just something the other day, a sports thing. They were talking about the gymnasts, and there's sort of banter going on back and forth between these two male commentators, and something about it, there being a contest on Valentine's Day, and one of them says, "Oh, you could take your significant other, your partner, whatever, girlfriend, to it," and the other guy says, "Oh yeah, just what we need to do. Go to see girls in scantily clad uniforms, right?" And he's getting huge flack for it because he just sort of like his mouth is just out there wide, and not sort of. I think that somebody in that kind of position has to constantly be reining it in, right? Has to constantly be checking himself, him or herself, right, on those
Unfortunately,
things.
there are too many who have made their
And we've seen
niche
that, right?
by running their mouths.
Right.
Right? I mean, when someone like Rush Limbaugh gets the Medal of Honor, it just denigrates everybody who has gotten it before. This man has run his mouth and caused so much strife.
Well, he's dying now, so it's.
He
Well,
has nothing to do,
no.
he doesn't, he still
Really,
doesn't.
Right.
it's
Right.
just,
No,
whatever
no,
you
but
do,
he
you
doesn't
win.
deserve the Medal of Honor, period.
Medal of
That's
Honor.
Yes,
Where
Ron-
but
they
they've made their mark by
Ron.
being obnoxious.
Ronnie.
I was just gonna say, I think there's a difference between speaking up
Speaking out.
and just
Oh,
doing
well, if you put
malicious
it
talk.
that way.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think so.
speaking
That's what
up,
we're saying.
being an upstander and not letting things go by,
Right. So
being
this
not being the
doesn't apply.
bystander.
Right, and I think
Different.
even the first part of the verse
Yeah.
speaks to that, right? He who guards his tongue, right? It's not saying he who is always silent, right? But one who takes note of what they're saying, right? Guarding the tongue is like being careful,
judicious.
right? Being judicious, right? With speech. One is that, then you use it when it's appropriate, right? It's sort of like, we're talking about yelling, not yelling. For some people, when they yell, right, people know that they mean business because it's so out of their character. It's so
Right.
different than how they normally are, right? If you typically guard your tongue, if you typically, right, are really reserved, and then at some point you speak up about something, people are going to notice, right? So it's not about never speaking up for yourself or speaking up for others. It's just how you go about doing it. Okay, go on, Ronnie.
He who gives away secrets is a base fellow. Do not take up with a garrulous man.
Yeah, right, enough
I
said.
mean, obviously, somebody has trusted you with something, and now you're betraying their trust.
Right,
Yeah.
really important.
And you're showing who you are.
Right.
But again, there are times when one must.
Yes,
Well, that's a question, right?
You know,
That gets into the question,
Right.
right? Of speaking, you know, are there times where you have to, right? Even in my job now, but certainly when I dealt more with kids, right, teenagers. If somebody said, you know, I want to tell you something in confidence, right? Okay, well, fine, but if I deem that I need to let somebody else know,
yeah,
I'm going to break that confidence, right? If it's about your safety or somebody else's safety, right? It's important
Right.
then I'm going to break that
yeah.
confidence, right?
I mean, there are so many kids afraid to say something because their friend told them something.
Right.
But they know their friend is gonna get
Right.
into trouble or it's gonna hurt them.
Right, so you have to be
know
able to gauge that.
When you do that.
Sheila.
It's the same thing, think before you open your mouth and say anything.
Yeah.
Think of what you're gonna say before you say it, and that's
Mhm.
really what it comes down to. And I even tell my grandsons and my kids that now.
Right.
Just don't open your mouth and say what comes out. Think how you're gonna hurt another person, how the other person is gonna take advantage of it, or things like that. And this is really what this is saying, basically.
And about speed, again, the last one, Ronnie.
If you see a man hasty in speech,
Yeah.
there is more hope for a fool than for him.
That's what I just said.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
not thinking
right.
about what.
Right, you gotta
Think
slow
before
down.
you open your mouth.
Becky, we're gonna say something.
I wanted to respond to the one before.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago, when our younger son had a very good friend, and this kid, this was in middle school,
Mhm.
had told him that he wanted to kill himself.
Mm.
This is a true story.
Mm.
And he was very concerned about him because he was serious. And so he told somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And this kid didn't talk to him
Yeah.
for at least 10 years,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
12 years.
Yeah.
And they were really good friends.
Mm-hmm.
He got the help he needed, by the way.
Good.
And they actually took him out of his home
Mm-hmm.
because that was part of the problem. And he ended up going to the Air Force Academy. I mean, totally changed his life.
Right.
At which point he called Sean
Mm-hmm.
and thanked him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
But it took him that long to realize.
well, because it's.
So he did the right thing, and it took him a while. He didn't
Of
come
course
to
he did
us.
the right
Yeah.
thing.
He thought about it himself.
He
but
had
it
to
took
blame
him a while.
somebody for
It
the,
took
Who did he
that
go to?
situation.
Who did
Who
your son?
did he go to?
Your son?
He was very close to the assistant principal,
Principal.
and he went to him. He's a mandated reporter,
Right.
and
Right.
it was the right person to go to.
Yep.
And but that kid, thank God, your
Got the help
son
he needed.
saved his life.
Right.
He
Just
did.
about.
Right.
And,
Well, he did,
well, he
because he was
did,
thinking
because if
about
he
it.
hadn't,
By the way, his brother did commit suicide
Oh,
afterwards.
Wow.
It was terrible,
Wow. Wow.
and he was Jewish, by the way,
well,
which
I don't
is
think
very
that's-
unusual.
Yeah. No,
So-
it's
that's
We're-
not
we're,
fair. My
we're
son
not-
has a friend who
But
committed.
people
Yeah.
never think the Jewish kids.
Yeah, no, we're-
beautiful home,
Yeah.
like big house.
probably in about the same percentages of we are in the population.
right,
You know,
right.
it's you know.
My ex-husband's first cousin committed suicide as a young, like he was
So
20.
it happens.
Well, I
Yeah.
think he was gay and
Mhm. Right.
he was terrified of
Yeah.
coming out
Coming out.
and people
And certainly then.
finding out.
Right.
I've always suspected that that's what it was.
Yeah.
Right.
And this was,
A long time ago.
I had a brother-in-law.
about 50 years ago.
Yeah. Different
Wow.
time.
So that's,
Different
that is a
time,
long
right.
time ago.
Right.
It was a different We'll get
Different
back.
era, different time.
Kate,
different
on top of page 3, a couple more.
Do go about as a gossip
Should probably
monger.
be do not go out.
Yeah.
Yeah, do not.
Oh,
Sorry.
that's why I repeated, I'm like, okay.
Do
Do
not.
not go about as a gossip monger among your countrymen. Do not profit by the blood of your fellow. I am the Lord. Say
Yeah,
I.
you're right, it should be a nod in there.
Okay, you shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor.
Okay, so this one's coming up in this week's Torah reading, right? Part of the 10 Commandments. And the way it's many times set out is you've got these 3 things in one verse. And so the rabbis look at them and they say, like, well, they don't quite seem on par in terms of the severity of the transgression, right? Not murdering, don't commit adultery, and not stealing, and not bearing false witness against your neighbor. And so one, when it gets to stealing, they say that means stealing a life, like selling somebody into slavery, right? That kind of a thing. And not bearing false witness against your neighbor is they talk about it in like a capital crime, right? That if you're lying, right, to the point that somebody else could be convicted of a capital crime, that's what they try to see it. But I think that we also look at it in more, not simplistic, but less severe cases at all, right? Not bearing false witness against your neighbor, right? Don't go around telling lies, telling stories about somebody else, right? The key word in Hebrew, if you look up in the text from Leviticus, the third word in is rachil, and oftentimes people talk about rechilut as the term for gossiping, telling false things like that. But we'll also see that telling the truth, right, is sometimes, gets into this as well. And, whether it's, as Becky was saying, right, somebody who you say something because you think this person's going to hurt themselves, right? It's a true thing, but you say it anyway. But other times, right, you could be talking truthfully about something. I went to so-and-so's house for dinner and they burned the meal, blah, 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 whatever else, right? It's true, it happened, right? It's not a falsehood, but it's not, right? It's not nice, right? What do they say now when you're gonna say something? 3 questions, right? Is it true? Is it necessary? And is it nice? I forget the order, but I think those are the 3 things, right? True, necessary, nice, right?
I want nice to be the first one.
You want right? Okay. Is it nice? Is it true? Is it necessary?
It cuts.
Right?
I don't
It
even
doesn't
think
matter.
true even
Ronnie.
matters.
The fact that these things are all together in one verse, though,
Mhm.
apparently,
Yep.
it is intentional.
Sure.
So, even though taking a life obviously is taking a life. That's
right.
you can't,
Undo it.
you can't,
Right.
it's just awful. But I think in ways, all of these things can be equally injurious to someone else. When you take a life, the people around their lives are forever changed.
Right.
When you commit adultery, the people involved are forever changed.
Right.
Depending on what you steal, their lives can be forever
Right.
changed.
Nice.
And bearing false witness. So
Right.
in some ways,
Right.
I can see, don't say it's a little sin or it's a
Yeah.
little-
No, I hear you. Yeah.
It can be,
It's,
it can destroy a life.
Right.
Absolutely, all of these things.
Every one of them you can
Yes.
do in their own way, really.
exactly, so
Right. Yep. No, I hear what you're saying. Absolutely. Right. And the rabbis also will look at this and they'll say that speaking negatively, speaking falsely about somebody else, is tantamount to murder, they look at the idea of the color change in the face, right? So one of the texts talks about it, that your face turns white. I always think about it as, right, you're embarrassed, your face turns red. But either way, whatever it is, right, we see a I think the word physiological change, right, of something based on an emotional, right? We see a physical change based on an emotional experience. Someone's talking negatively about you, and the color of your skin changes. There's a blood reaction that's really about your life, right? And so they really see a connection to that. And I think, Ronnie, you're right about it, how much a life can change. And I think that's something that so many of us struggle about the media in many different ways is how the power that they have to very quickly change somebody's life. And unfortunately, it's usually for the negative, for the worst,
Online
right?
bullying.
Online bullying, all of them. It's horrible.
And when it's wrong,
Right.
the correction is like on the back page
Yeah,
of the paper.
right.
It's, well, so what, you know.
Right.
we're
Even
not
even
gonna
if
admit
even
to
if it were front and center, by the time it happens,
Happens.
it's too late.
Yeah.
Right? It's too late, right?
We had
Um,
wonderful neighbors across the street. The people who lived next to them at the time were really anti-Semitic and wouldn't have anything to do with these people. And they sold it, so they sold their home and they told the people coming in, don't have anything to do with them, they're nasty and whatever. And they came in and they had some young children, and something happened where something was happening outside and the people we knew went to help.
Mhm.
And he said, thank you. And they just started talking. And they realized that they had been given sold a bill of
Right,
goods
right.
that had nothing at all to do with the truth.
Mhm.
And these two couples became very close with them and their kids. And they said, we will never ever do that. We will always seek for ourselves
Right.
the truth.
Yeah, that find out
Because-
yourselves. Yeah.
They were really painted them as so vile and,
Right.
you know, and there was no truth to it at
Right.
all.
I think trying to undo malicious stuff like that is like, I used to use this example with my students and my kids too, I would say, it's like telling somebody, don't think about elephants.
Right.
You know, it's like there.
It's there, you're gonna think about it.
So Ronnie,
and the
since
people
you
I
mentioned
knew-
it, why don't you jump to the bottom of the page?
Excuse me, but the
Yeah.
people I knew just knew that the newcomers were just cold, wouldn't say hello or anything. They had no idea
Right.
that all of this had been fed to them.
Right. We'll come back to the one above it, but read the next story.
The gossiper or
Yeah,
Hasidic
the gossiper.
tale?
Yep.
A woman repeated a story, gossip, about a neighbor. Within a few days, everyone in the community knew the story. The person she talked about heard what had been said about her, and she said she was very sad. Later, the woman who had spread the story learned that it was not true. She was very sorry and went to a wise rabbi and asked what she could do to repair the damage. Oh, I know, I've heard this story. After giving this some thought, the rabbi said to her, go home, get one of your feather pillows. I love this story.
Yeah.
Get one of your feather pillows and bring it back to me. Surprised by the rabbi's response, the woman followed his advice and went home to get a feather pillow and brought it to the rabbi. Now, said the rabbi, open the pillow, pull out all the feathers. Confused, the woman did what she was told to do. After a few minutes, the rabbi said, now, I want you to find every one of the feathers and put them back into the pillow. That's impossible, said the woman, almost in tears. The window is open. The wind has scattered them all over the room, blown many feathers outside. I can't possibly find them all. Aha! Yes, said the rabbi. And that is what happens when you gossip or tell a story about someone else. Once you talk about someone, the words fly from one person's mouth to another, just like these feathers flew in the wind. Once you say them, you can never take them back. I love that
Right,
story.
right. So-
And
I've heard-
The image of that is
Right.
just.
I've heard it told in several different ways, right? Like this one. I've heard it being told, I guess, more modern times, right? Of squeeze some toothpaste out of the the tube, right? And then somebody says, "Oh, okay, put it back." Right? You can't do it, right? And another one that I've heard, also more in the Hasidic tale realm, I think also makes a good point. Is there's a boy who's doing negative things, whether it's speaking or whatever else about people at school, and so his father says, "Well, every day you come home, I'm going to ask you, did you speak badly about somebody? And if so, I want you to hammer a nail into this fence, right? And then if you don't, if you say something good, you can take a nail out of the fence." So boy comes home. "Did you speak badly about somebody?" "Yes, I did." He pounds a nail. Next day, "Did you speak badly about it?" "Yes, I did." He pounds a nail. Eventually, he gets sick and tired of pounding nails into the fence, and he starts changing his ways. His father says, "Well, did you speak badly about something?" "No, I actually said something nice about this boy." "Okay, you can pull a nail out," right? And eventually, he's pulled all the nails out, and he goes to his father and he says, "It's wonderful. I've undone everything that I did before." And his father takes him to the fence and shows him all the holes in the fence, right? And shows the impact that his words had on somebody. Even though he's now removed the nail, the hole is still there. The harm is still there. I like that image of it as well. So it's as sort of Ronnie was saying, once it's out there, it's out there.
That's right.
And it's done that damage, and people already have a shifted image about somebody based on something that was said and something that was reported in the newspaper or whatever else, and it's very hard then to rebuild that. So in the middle of page 3, you see there's a line, a box there that says the Chafetz Chaim, Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan. He was a gentleman, a rabbi who did a lot of work around positive speech, right? Around speaking positively and not negatively. And he gets the name of a book that he wrote from the next verse in the middle of Psalms 34, 13 to 14. "Who is the man who is eager for life? Who desires years of good fortune? Guard your tongue from evil, your lips from deceitful speech." Within that, right, the question, who is the man who's eager for life? Mi ha'ish hechafetz chaim. Chafetz chaim is where he got the name of his book from. And so a lot of times in rabbinic experiences, if you wrote a book and you had a title for it, that ended up being the name by which that rabbi was known. So a lot of times we don't talk about Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan, we speak about the Chafetz Chaim. Right? So anytime you hear about people talking about Lashon Hara, about bad speech, or Lashon Tov, good speech, we're talking, usually referring to the Chafetz Chaim, because that was the name of the book that he wrote. And he really sees his the stuff that he comes up with coming from this verse: guard your tongue from evil, your lips from deceitful speech. That's the type of person who loves life, right? Is about guarding your tongue. Okay, going on to page 4. Andrea, sorry you had to deal with the traffic this morning.
That's okay.
You doing okay?
I love driving 0 miles an hour.
0 miles an hour.
75?
Yeah.
Gotta get off 75.
Man,
Well, it was going 0 for quite a while.
Frustrating.
Well, the increased support was like very exciting. The sin of slander. Everyone who secretly slanders his fellow has no place in the world to come.
And this is certainly wrong meeting. Try the library, I assume. So this is coming out of a place and a time, right, where they've spent a lot of time focusing on what's the world to come, right? What is it going to be, the next world, and how do we merit a place or a good place in that world? It's not something that we focus on all that much, but this was certainly a big piece of the tradition back then, right? And here, the sin of slander, right? Anyone who secretly slanders his fellow has no place in the world to come, right? The Hebrew, ein lo chelek le'olam haba, a peace. There's no peace of the world to come for you, right? And that was a very strong statement for them back then, to say that this is one of the things. Like you could say, oh, okay, murder, right? They don't have a place in the world to come, right? But here, slander, right, raises to that level as well.
You still destroy a person's
You
life.
still destroy a person's life. I hear you. Right? Mishnah Torah. This is Rambam writing in the 12th century. It is the same whether one speaks evil speech in front of his fellow or not in front of him. And one who recounts things that, if they will be heard, cause damage to his fellow, to his body, or to his property, or even will just upset him or frighten him. Behold, this is evil speech. Right? So in the Torah it says not to put a stumbling block before the blind, and don't curse the deaf. Right? And so you could say, okay, we're talking about somebody who can't hear, but that's not just because they are deaf, but maybe just because they're not there, right? That if they're not around, doesn't mean, right, that evil speech doesn't affect them, right?
The fact that you say something about that person isn't there, but I'm hearing it.
Right.
And will I go and tell them?
You might go and tell them,
with someone else?
or even just it changes your opinion
of
of them, right? The way that you relate to them. Right?
Eventually it'll get back to him one way.
And more than likely than not, it'll get back to them as well. Right?
Now, Rabbi, what is the tantalizing, it's so tantalizing sometimes to gossip and it's almost, the exhilaration you get. I must be for myself. I mean, I have gossiped in the past. Yeah, we all have. So what is that? Why is that such a pleasurable experience when it's really so very wrong?
Right. So I'll let you in on new language. Right. The new language today is, do you have some tea? Right?
Yeah.
Or I've got some tea to spill, to tell,
Yeah,
right?
tea.
It's gossip. It's right.
Really?
I guess
Yeah.
we're not
Yeah,
in
yeah,
that.
this is-
Where is that the new language?
Becky, that's why I'm
That's
here.
a
I'm
way
letting
and a
you
half.
know
That's
this. This
the
is
year
why
to let
I'm
me
here,
spill
right?
the tea.
Spill some
People
tea.
out of the-
55, don't you speak that way or
I
something?
don't know. Ask Maya. She knows what it is.
That's the
Yeah.
kids?
Yeah, the kids.
Got some tea?
Yeah.
Yeah, some tea. So yes, and there is this. Once you've got it inside you, you want to get it out, right? I've got this gossip. I've got this story about somebody. I've got to tell somebody, right? And and it's there is a bit of that, right? And trying to tamp it down, trying to hold that in is not easy necessarily.
Do you think there's a fascination with, there's that salacious quality, I suppose. Perhaps it's true, and
Yeah, but even if it's
No,
true,
and-
that's
no, I
You're right.
agree with you.
right.
But they hope it's true.
But why is
But
it
there's
so
that,
good?
you know?
I think,
Spill it. Spill
Andrea?
the tea.
I think in some ways, when you're gossiping about somebody else, you're putting yourself in a superior situation.
Right.
Like you're saying, I would never do that, but
Right.
listen to this.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. Right. It's raising you up.
Mhm.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
but
And
now you're
it's-
hearing it's really putting you down.
Yes. Right. Certainly. Right.
Right.
Right. In a spiritual
Ethically.
ethical place, it's lowering you. Right. And I think that's that if you think about the woman in the story with the pillow, right, or others in her case, that eventually people don't want to be friends with that person,
With the
right?
gossiper.
With the gossiper,
Right.
right?
Because
Right?
if
For a
she's
while,
gonna turn on me.
for a
Yeah.
while, it might be nice,
Yeah.
right? Oh yeah, I know,
She has all the
she's
latest
got the
news.
news. Let's talk
Yeah.
to her. Da, da, da. But when it turns around eventually, when it becomes about other people, then or somebody that you care about, then maybe you're not so happy about this
Yeah.
person sharing this.
And you
news.
can't trust that person.
You can't trust the
It
person,
also
right?
might come about, perhaps, not necessarily anyone at this table, but perhaps
Such paradigms.
psychologically, there's that psychological phenomenon where when you want to believe something, you will tell stories that back up what you want to believe. And therefore, it's called, the phenomena, but
Well,
it's in the book When Prophecy Fails. And they talk
Self-fulfilling,
about
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes.
kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You wanna believe the world is ending, so you go out and proselytize to other people. The more people you can convince that what you're saying is true, the more you will believe what you're saying is true. And I'm wondering if part of that is operating in when people gossip, that perhaps they've got something that they don't like about this person, and they want other people to believe it too. I'm just saying, I don't know, it's just.
Right. I think there's a lot of components to it, and not for each instance and for each individual that does it. It's
Not
going to be
always
sort
the
of different
same
reasons why somebody
motivation.
might different motivations around it. But yeah, I think that there is.
Well, look at Hitler, who spoke evil about the Jews. Let's talk
Right.
about Hitler.
Right.
I mean, what were all the reasons? One, somebody hurt his feelings, and he wanted everyone else to agree with him that Jewish people, because this one person represented everybody,
Right.
were bad, okay? I mean, there's the most
Right.
evident, prominent, or him.
If you say it enough,
Right.
people believe it,
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter what you're talking about.
Well, we've got
You-
people who do that today. don't we?
Exactly. You can convince anybody of anything if you say it enough. Give me a chance.
And if you are known for saying other things and being believed as well, right?
Yeah.
Right. That the more that if somebody threw out the word trust, right? Somebody has the trust of the community, right? And here we're talking about communities that were much smaller, right, than what we know of today, right? And so, what we have in our synagogue might have been a whole village back then, for many of these people, and so they really knew each other, and you're like, oh, this person's trustworthy, and then they go ahead and they say something about somebody, you're gonna believe them, right? Until it's found out that they're not, or that it is true. Again, was true, but it wasn't nice, right? And it wasn't something that was necessary. And I think that's all part of the trying. And again, it's not easy.
I like it though.
I'm sorry.
It's not easy you've got to try and figure out.
Yes, it is.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's okay.
It's inside out. I
Nobody
thought
noticed. Go
I
ahead.
liked it. I thought
So tomorrow, everyone's gonna be like, "Did you see Andrea yesterday? She's wearing her shirt
Andrea?
inside
I
out."
didn't even know.
She was really
Go
rushing.
ahead.
No, I wasn't rushing. I
Until you got into the car.
was crying.
Yeah, but I actually like it like that.
It's quite all right.
Oh,
Don't-
I'm feeling
But
the
it's-
hem and I'm like, wait a second.
I have a friend, she's my hairdresser, she's been in business a long time, she doesn't advertise, it's all word of mouth. And obviously someone has said something. Fortunately, they've said it to people who know her long enough to know that that's not so.
Mhm.
You may not have liked the haircut or the way she did your hair, but you can't say anything about her character,
Mhm.
because those of us who know her know that's not so. But for someone who's running a business, word of mouth means
Right,
everything.
right.
You can't go to the kosher butcher and then come home and say, I think he had his thumb on the scale,
Right,
you
right,
know,
right.
or that looked kind of moldy or whatever.
Yeah.
You're gonna destroy his business.
Exactly.
And I've seen it happen a lot in organizations, right? When when I'm interviewing, right?
Yeah.
And people are asking, like, well, what do you attribute a turnaround at the synagogue to, right?
Right.
And I said, I think that a big piece of it was attitude and how people spoke about the congregation, right? That how quickly, and I've seen it in other places, that there was a time at the preschool at the synagogue I worked, was the synagogue in Pittsburgh, where a couple of parents were having conversations. They didn't think that the security was good, that people could get in, and, even if they weren't, supposed to be there, whatever else. And they started spreading it. They pulled their children and they started speaking to them, and very quickly the numbers just started going down. And
Instead
it
of
doesn't take
doing something
it
positive.
doesn't take much for
Right.
bad press, for bad word of mouth. And especially, you've got Facebook and all that stuff, it gets around very quickly. And I think the same type of thing in the positive direction. When people are happy, when people are talking positively about something, it can really change something.
But if they
And,
thought that they needed to up the level, they should have done something positive
yes,
instead of,
right? We'd hope so,
Yeah.
right? But even if in the end they felt like they weren't, maybe they went to the administration, maybe
And
they
they-
tried to get something changed,
Right.
and it didn't happen, they still, right,
Yeah.
that negative language and all.
Doesn't this happen a lot with rabbis?
Sure,
They get ruined.
Mhm.
This could
They
be
can.
ruining for a
Right.
rabbi.
sure.
This happened at a former synagogue. Young girl came in, she worked for the congregation, and they didn't give her a raise. And she spread a rumor about the rabbi.
Mm-hmm.
Not from a nice family, I knew the family,
Mm-hmm.
and she was looking for a payoff.
Mm.
And the rabbi wouldn't pay it off
Mm.
because he was a very substantial rabbi.
Mm-hmm.
Because she was young and very attractive, and they thought, they kind of forced him to retire, and he did.
Yeah, I mean, it can
And
anybody
he was a
in
substantial-
a position of power.
Right.
It's really difficult,
Broke our
right?
hearts.
It's really difficult.
Broke our
And
hearts.
we want to be able to give the respect and honor due to both sides within a situation like that, and you
He
really
didn't
gotta
fight,
really
and he
gotta
should have.
really gotta get into to decide it.
She didn't get her payoff.
It's
She
difficult.
left the congregation.
It's very difficult.
But I have to tell you, it was a horrible situation.
Mm-hmm.
Rumors,
Mm-hmm. Right.
rumors.
Right. Right.
You know what, it's too much trouble to gossip, I'm too old for that.
There you go.
Well, that's it.
I mean,
I mean, I didn't even know what was
basically, that's
going
how I
on.
feel.
Mhm,
Yeah, really.
mhm, right.
I mean, I
They're
walked in
better
one
off,
day.
right.
Well, I didn't know what tea was. What does that tell you?
You didn't know what was?
Tea.
What tea?
Spilled tea.
Spilling the
I didn't know
tea.
what that was.
I mean, it just,
Okay.
You talk about
that point.
gossip.
Kate, read on page 5.
It's funny.
Where?
Page
Where?
5.
Yeah, baby.
Okay, and Rab,
No, the top one.
hot coals, which are cooled on the outside, grow cool within. But gossip and slander, even if cooled outwardly, do not cool inwardly.
So they
It's
don't
always
die.
there.
Right? It's
Yeah,
always
so
there,
they
right?
don't
It's,
tell you
it's
now, you
constantly
can't bring it
burning.
back in.
Right.
Right. Okay, go
That's my
on.
grandmother said, off
Okay,
and along
and
is
Rab,
off
Rabbi Sheshet
Mm-hmm.
further said, citing Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah,
Good.
anyone who speaks slander and anyone who accepts and believes the slander he hears, and anyone who testifies falsely about another, it is fitting to throw him to the dogs, as it is stated, and you shall not eat any flesh that is torn of beasts in the field, you shall cast it to the dogs. And afterward it is written, you shall not utter a false report. Put not your hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. Uttering rumors is here. Uttering rumors here. No. Uttering rumors.
It's here.
Uttering rumors is here equated to delivering false testimony.
Great. Yes. Some other punctuation and all could have been helpful there.
Furthermore,
Let's pause there
okay.
for a second.
Okay.
So what's happening? If we look at just the verses, we've got Exodus 22:30 and Exodus 23:1 right next to each other. One finishes up saying, right, if you shall not eat any flesh that's torn of the beasts of the field, you shall cast it to the dogs. Sounds like we're talking about I don't know, roadkill or right, something like that, right? How do we connect that to speech? Well, the next verse, you shall not utter a false report. So a lot of times the rabbis look and they say, well, if something's right next to it, something else in the Torah, there's got to be some connection between them. So what are they saying? That somebody who either speaks slander or listens to slander and sort of takes it in, believes it, and anyone who testifies falsely about another person, that is fitting to throw him to the dogs, right? Discard him, right? He's not worth being around, basically, right? Get rid of, because of the connection between these verses. Go ahead. Furthermore,
read into the verse as though it is stated. Do not cause a false report to be accepted. Do not lead others to accept your false report.
so back then, certainly, and even still today, there's really a system. The court system, the legal system, was really built upon the truthfulness of the parties, right? And that's why the whole tradition of swearing on the Bible, right? That this is that if you do that and you lie, right, this is where you're at, right? You're in this place where you're really separated separating yourself from the community, and so any kind of false statement, certainly within a legal proceeding, was seen as one of the highest issues, because it really breaks down the fabrics of the community. Right? It completely tears the community apart.
You know, Rabbi, the problem with lying is that you have to remember what you said, who you lied to.
Right.
Right.
And
Yeah,
you
it's
can't
very-
take it back.
It's very consuming, time
Yeah.
consuming.
That's the
And
problem.
And
emotionally
that's because
consuming.
we're
And then it
not
gets
that
bigger and
way,
bigger.
but
Takes
there
a
are
while.
people
That's
that
too much
are,
energy,
there's
that's
something absolutely wrong with them,
Right.
that are fabulous we know, fabulous liars, and it's a sickness, it really
Right.
is, what do you call that?
Pathological.
Yeah, pathological liar, that it just comes right out.
Right.
And whether they believe it or not,
do.
they just say it, and people, it's just, they put it out there,
Right.
and that's a sickness.
Too much trouble.
Sickness. No, but that's because
But-
we're normal.
Right. For you it
Don't
is.
Speak for yourself.
Well,
okay?
yeah,
And-
we're normal. I'm gonna speak for myself, I'm normal.
And quite honestly, I mean, I know you were referencing the president, who's obviously
Me?
lying.
No,
I
she
mean,
didn't
there's-
say that.
there's such
You're taking
obvious-
it in.
But unfortunately, I married
There's
a
only
man.
one.
I married a man who was a pathological liar,
Oy.
and it took a while to unravel it, to see the truth, because everything I knew about him, it turned out, came from him. Not that my sister knew him in a larger setting and saw how he conducted himself. What she told me about him came from him telling her about himself. And it took a while to be with family and friends to see certain things and going, wait a minute, that's not what he said, and that's not what this one's saying, and put it together and go, oh my God, there's
Let me get out of
something,
this
yeah.
situation.
But afterwards, when I would start to, be out with people, the bells would go off immediately when somebody was too much about themselves,
Yeah.
But he would lie about what he had for breakfast. I mean, in
Hmm.
things that have no
Doesn't
no
matter.
value.
Doesn't matter.
That's sick.
Okay.
Yeah,
On page
and it
6,
was a sickness.
Page 6, we see again sort of the idea of how this impacts so many different people. The second text down, malicious speech about a third party kills 3 people.
Right.
Kills the one who speaks malicious speech, the one who accepts the malicious speech when he hears it, and the one about whom the malicious speech is said. Right. That, and this is partly also why when we think about the in some ways there's parallel to a lot of the statements that we make during Yom Kippur, asking for forgiveness. So many of them are about speech, and how we first need to go to the person to ask for forgiveness before we then go to God asking for forgiveness. And we tell you that when we say something bad about somebody else, we're harming that person and God as well, right? That person is made B'Tselem Elohim. That person is made in the image of God. That person has a piece, in my thinking, that person has a piece of the divine within them, and thus God is harmed as well when you say something negative about somebody else, or maliciously, negative or positive, maliciously about somebody else, and so we have to. We could in some ways add a fourth, right, here from the Talmud. This is from the Talmud. It is saying that it kills 3 people. It affects, right,
Yeah.
4, we could even say, if we include God into it as well. The last paragraph is, last text is from the Siddur, fairly standard in most Ashkenazic Siddurim now. It comes originally from some places in the Talmud. And I brought it because I think that, and in some ways, the psalm about Chafetz Chaim also is something that's in our liturgy every day. A lot of times people ask about, well, why do we say the same prayers every day? Right? Why do we say these same things over and over and over again? And I think for me, a big piece of it is I was thinking some more about it this morning. Can you think of anything in your lives that you look at, a phrase, a statement, or whatever else, every day? We generally don't have.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. Right. Okay.
I say I love you to John every day.
Okay.
and he says
Good.
it to
Right.
me.
I love you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Please. Right.
Right.
Sometimes people put like a little affirmation or something, right, on their door so they see it when they're leaving the house or something like that. I think that that's sort of in this category, right? The things in the prayers, so many of the things in our daily prayers are there because they're the things that we want to reflect on a regular basis. We want to reflect on each and every day to make them a part of who we are, right? So to have these couple of statements, both, right? Who is who is the one who is eager for life, who desires years of good fortune? Guard your tongue from evil, your lips from deceitful speech, right? Every day we get a dose of that. Same thing with this one. In fact, this one comes up 3 times a day because it's at the end of, or 4 on holidays, because it's the end of every Amidah.
Right.
At the end of the Amidah, we've done the prayers, and if it were, we like the way we do our Saturday morning, usually Shacharit here, the morning service, is we do it silently first, and then there's a repetition doing it out loud. When you do it out loud, we don't say this, but we say this is part of the private. It's right at the end. Right? May the words of my mouth and meditations of my heart be acceptable in front of you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. So right away, we're already talking about words, right? We've just spent the last 5, 7, maybe 10 minutes in private meditation, and that's in a world of words, right? And we can be thinking, what were the things that we were, quote unquote, saying, even if it's not verbally out loud? My God, guard my tongue from evil and my lips from deceit, from speaking deceit. We have to be thinking about it. Maybe somebody like Sheila, right, by this time in her life, she's said this so many times that it's, she doesn't have to worry about lying and slander and gossiping. It's too much trouble, right? But for the rest of us, mere mortals, right, we're still working on this. And it's something that we say on a regular basis, right? Guard my tongue from evil, my lips from speaking deceit.
I only say it to the dog.
To those who curse me, let my life remain silent and my life be like dust to all. Open my heart to your Torah and I will pursue your commandments. What do you think, Andrea?
I don't understand.
I don't
Why
think
be
you
like
do it.
dust to all? I don't like that part. What does that mean, Rabbi? Or-
Well,
It
I'm
doesn't have anything
thinking,
to do with it.
I'm thinking like, my brother's wife, right?
No.
Well, my brother marries somebody who doesn't like me,
Okay.
and she tells stories about me from, all kinds of stories, whether they're true or not or whatever. But I purposefully will not. I speak to my brother infrequently at best. We used to be the closest of friends, but I give him very little information
Mhm.
because I'm afraid that will go back to her
Mhm.
and she will curse me or
Mhm.
she will create some new thing about me. Because she
Interesting.
thinks my life
Right.
is against hers, you know, like,
Right.
and I don't really
Right.
care.
So
She
if
makes
someone
my
if
life
someone's
unhappy.
going to curse me, right?
Yeah.
Let them not know very much about me.
That's
right. Let my life remain silent. Right.
And my life be like
I
this.
love, the
I
other
don't
part
think
I
even
see
even-
as, it can't affect me because I'm dust.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
That's
I'm
right.
Sort of
not
annul, sort of
solid.
self annulment. Right. Let me just
Not
Be
be
like
there.
invisible.
Let
be
me
Right.
invisible
like
to
not
them.
be there.
Right. Right.
Rather
It's
than
gonna
that,
hurt me,
dust,
but-
to me, dust is like you're dead,
Well, there's a way that
dust
they-
is when
Right.
you die.
Right.
But
turn it
I
Well,
think this is
you're
just
just
not
to the
there.
people
Yeah.
that will speak ill about you.
Right.
So if you
Let
create
me
yourself
be
an
like
imaginary
right. Some
creature,
let me be something that they're not like. They're not going to be concerned about.
But they're not able
Right.
to target.
Right.
with
Right.
dust.
Right. Just us. Right. Right. Right.
They can't focus on that.
Right.
That's right.
As for those who design evil against me, quickly nullify their counsel and disrupt their design. Act for your name's sake, act for your right hand's sake, act for your sanctity's sake, act for your Torah's sake. Then your beloved one may be given rest. May your right hand save and respond to me. And it goes on. May the words of my mouth and the musings of my heart be acceptable to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer, the one who makes peace in the heights. May God make peace upon us, to all Israel, and we say amen. Right? So much, right? Here we're talking about speech, and we conclude with making peace.
What is that
Right?
part,
Right.
Rabbi,
That-
about your
that-
right hand's sake? I mean, maybe I'm.
Yeah,
What's that?
I mean, I think that it's a poetic, rabbinic way of connecting with God, right? Act for your. It's sort of like saying the same thing in numerous ways. God's strength, God's power, God's name. They're all sort of like in the name of God, basically, but just different ways of saying it,
Okay.
right? When we think about God's name, we're thinking about a way that we understand or connect with God. God's right hand is seen as the more powerful. God's sanctity, God's holiness, all of that is thinking just about how are we connecting to God there. Ron?
I just wanted to say, when I see the, for your right hand's sake, because I theoretically am part of you, and I am the part of you that acts on this earth,
Mm-hmm.
do something
Nice.
to protect that.
Right. Good. Yeah. So
I'm
yes.
your right hand.
Right. I'm your right hand. Right. When there's I forget where it's from. It says that when a person is hurting, right, in whatever way, right, physically, psychologically, emotionally, that to God, it's like if a person has a splinter in your finger. And you're like, oh, my finger is hurting, right? So God is saying, oh, my George is hurting, right? But it's a part of George. It's like Ronnie's saying, my right hand, right? My right hand is hurting, and whether God can do something about that or not, there's different theologies around that, right? But recognizes that hurt, right? Feels that pain. So we're right there as God's right hand within this. So that's nice.
I was
Andrea.
just curious about this one thing.
Mm-hmm.
As for those who design evil against me, nullify their counsel and disrupt their design, they're not saying hurt the person, they're just
Nope.
saying hurt their words
Correct.
or stop their words
Good.
or
Good.
stop, right?
Right.
Ignore
Or their
words.
mission.
Or
Right.
their mission,
Right.
yeah.
No, I think those are important things. There's I mentioned this. I don't know if it was yesterday in the Torah study class recently that there's a story of Rabbi Meir and his wife Bruria. And Rabbi Meir comes home and he's being harassed on the way home by some hooligans or whatever else. And he comes home and he says to his wife, "Oh, I wish they would die." Right? And she, sort of looking at a verse and shifting a little bit, says, "You're not supposed to pray for the death of the sinners, but that sort of the death of the sin, right? That they don't
Okay.
transgress anymore, right? We don't want harm coming to somebody, but we want them to change their ways, right? Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
that corrects me.
Good. So there's lots to think about, and when it comes to speech, and partly because we do it all the time, right? We are social beings. We're interacting with others, and there's got to be some consciousness and I keep losing this word. I've tried to come up with it a couple of times, and awareness, intentionality around what we do, right? So easily speech could fall into one of those things. We're just not so intentional about it. I remember I had a friend who having a conversation with him, he would, you just sort of wait for him to like say the next thing, because he just would constantly be pausing, right? And I think he was really being very thoughtful about what's the next thing he's going to say, what's the next thing, and had a real sort of that intentionality around it, as opposed to, right? I'm going to spill the tea now, right? Whatever else, right? And we just, we just get engaged, and we go, and it's not something that we put a whole lot of thought into. So, thank you.
It's too exhausting.
Too exhausting. Sheila's still there.
It really is. I'm sorry. It's just too exhausting.